Howdy folks, I'm just going to give a quick demo of upgrading your Travis YAML CI file to GitHub CI. Now, if anybody actually knows, Travis has had a bit of an issue recently. They've turned off a lot of the open source CI runs that they actually do, and they have like a real backlog. So I submitted this pull request how long ago? 22 minutes ago. Maybe it's not that long ago, but it still hasn't even started running Travis. That is a bit slow. And it actually turns out that it can be multiple hours at certain times as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this Ember phone input by Conto and upgrade their Travis CI to use GitHub CI, which is much better for these sorts of things. What I tend to do is I tend to find a good CI file from another add-on that I work with and start from there. So I'm going to use Ember Style Guide, which I happen to work on, and I'm going to copy this file. I should probably just gone to, well, let's go back. Instead of editing it, let's just view it raw. Let's copy this, and we're going to call it .github workflows ci.yaml. .github, new file, workflows ci.yaml. YAML or YAML? YML. That's fine. I think it doesn't matter which one, but I like to keep things consistent. Okay. So I copied and pasted in there. Now, what I like to do as the kind of next step, this is kind of like the basic GitHub CI setup. What I tend to like to do, I tend to like to take the Travis file and kind of open it side by side, and then make sure that certain variables are the same. So let's just have a quick check in here. Percy. There's no Percy in the Ember phone input one, so we can get rid of all the Percy stuff. Just easy enough. Let's have a look for Percy in this one. Don't need a Percy token. Don't need to worry about Percy tests. Means we can get rid of this. We don't need Percy exec anymore. Just npm run test. In fact, it's going to be yarn, but we'll get back to that in a minute. All the Percy. That's all the Percy. Okay, so let's keep going. Node.js version 10. Node version 10, still the same. Dist Xenial, not actually something we can deal with, so we'll just kind of ignore that for now. Add-ons, Chrome stable. Pretty sure we have that by default anyway. Cache yarn true. That's interesting. GitHub CI seems to be fast enough that actually 99% of the time you don't need to have a cache system. But I know that a later version of setup node actually allows you to just say with cache yes or something like that. So that might be something that we would add later. But I know just from experience that GitHub CI is pretty good. We don't need to worry about adding cache. Global jobs one. I don't think we need to bring this one in with us. It doesn't seem to be there. Branches, only master, main, and something that starts with V. Seems okay. We have a fast finish. I think that will be down here on timeout minutes. I don't think actually we use fast finish anymore for GitHub CI. Allowed failures. Unfortunately, that isn't supported by GitHub CI, so that's just a limitation. You can't really get around that. So let's start with our tests. So we have lint and test ember. So let me see. We have lint as a separate one up here, which is okay. Node version. So we want to do, don't need to install npm. I'm assuming that we'll have yarn. Maybe that's not a good assumption, but if we don't have yarn already, then we would install it first. Then we can just do yarn before install. So it does have an install here, but I think it's actually installed by default in the setup node, GitHub CI, but we'll see. Let's do yarn to yarn install and then yarn lint. I'm guessing that that's right, but we can move on. Floating dependencies. We do have a floating dependencies one. Same sort of thing. Let me just make sure that the yarn is a... And we want to do yarn test ember. Interesting. Okay. That's the floating dependencies one. We have a separate one for linting, and then this one here is going to be our tests here. So that would be tests. We don't need lock file because that's for npm. We don't need npm 7. Now we're just going to do yarn and then yarn. So it's the same as this one, but just we don't have the no lock file. And then we're going into the Ember try scenarios, which will be this thing down here. This actually looks a tiny bit broken. Yeah, the indentation looks a bit broken here, but that's fine. The thing that you also need to make sure if you do copy somebody else's implementation of like a GitHub CI file is that you need to make sure this is for Ember specifically. If you're using Ember try scenarios, you need to make sure that your scenarios match. So we need to add in 4, 8, and 12 because that's what's here. 4, 8, and 12. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, release, beta, canary, default with jQuery, and classic. Perfect. That's going to be, don't need that one. Going to do run yarn. Don't like having a separate name to these things. It's just, actually, although that's quite a long name, so maybe it is good to call it test. And then it's bin, Ember, try one, the scenario, skip cleanup. Boom. Then I think I need one more. That's try scenarios. I have tests. I have test, floating dependencies, and lint. So I have lint, floating dependencies, test, and then we have try scenarios. And I probably need a deploy because I noticed that over here, stage deploy. On master or tag, type equals push. Ban this one so we can copy. Name, deploy. We can just actually copy all of this because, yeah, why not? And then it is yarn and then yarn member deploy production. The actual way that you filter a particular job to only run on like a push to master is if you use this if thing. And that's pretty much it. There is one small caveat that it can be a little bit hard to like create a pull request and test this out, because I don't think it runs them by default if you're a contributor. If you're not a contributor, if you're doing it from a fork or something like that, which is reasonably sensible security protection, but it does make it a tiny bit difficult. The trick that I've found for that is that you open a quick pull request, or like get somebody to add like the CI YAML as an empty CI YAML, or maybe it has like just one job that like echo true or something, so that it succeeds and you can merge it. And then when you set your when you have somebody create a pull request to add the rest of the CI, then it will actually run. And that's it for a not quite so quick tip for how to upgrade a Travis YAML to a GitHub CI.